Hey, I'm Emma. Welcome to Revenge Pulse, where every story hits different. Hit subscribe and let's dive in. The probate hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in September. I sat at the plaintiff's table in Worcester County Courthouse, my hands folded on top of a worn leather briefcase. My attorney, David Chun, shuffled papers beside me. Across the aisle, my sister Victoria sat with her attorney, a man named Richard Blackwell, who charged $650 an hour and looked like he knew it. Judge Margaret Sullivan presided. She was in her late 60s, with steel gray hair and a reputation for no-nonsense rulings. We're here regarding the estate of Catherine Gardner, deceased, Judge Sullivan said. Mrs. Gardner's will is being contested by her daughter, Victoria Gardner. Let's proceed. Victoria's attorney stood up. Your Honor, this is a straightforward case of undue influence. My client's mother, Catherine Gardner, changed her will 6 months before her death, leaving her entire estate valued at $3.8 million to her younger daughter, Isabel Gardner. We believe this change was the result of manipulation by Isabel, who isolated Mrs. Gardner from her family and convinced her to disinherit Victoria. I listened to him twist the narrative. My weekly visits to Mom became isolation. My care during her illness became manipulation. My inheritance became theft. The evidence is clear, Blackwell continued. Catherine Gardner was 87 years old. She was on multiple medications. She was vulnerable, and Isabel took advantage of that vulnerability to enrich herself. He presented his case methodically. Testimony from neighbors who saw me at Mom's house frequently but rarely saw Victoria. Medical records showing Mom's prescriptions. An expert witness, a psychologist who'd never met Mom, testifying that elderly people are susceptible to undue influence. When it was our turn, David stood up. Your Honor, the facts are simple. Isabel Gardner visited her mother weekly for 6 years. She provided care, companionship, and support. Victoria visited perhaps twice a year, usually on holidays. Catherine Gardner was of sound mind when she changed her will. She simply chose to leave her estate to the daughter who showed up. David presented our evidence, text messages from me to Victoria, trying to coordinate visits, bank records showing I'd never taken money from Mom, photos of us together at the botanical garden, at doctor's appointments, at Sunday dinners, but I could see Judge Sullivan wasn't impressed. At the lunch recess, David pulled me aside. We're losing. What? The judge, she's sympathetic to Victoria, the older daughter versus the younger daughter. The medical expert's testimony about medication affecting cognition. It's working. But Mom was sharp until the end. I know. But proving that to a judge who's already leaning the other way? He shook his head. Do you have anything else? Anything that demonstrates your mother's capacity beyond doubt? I thought about the leather briefcase I'd brought, about what Mom had left me, along with the will. Maybe, I said. After lunch, Blackwell called Victoria to the stand. She looked perfect. Designer suite. Pearl necklace. Hair professionally styled. The successful daughter. The one who'd made something of herself. Not, like me, the academic. The professor, the one who lived modestly and visited her elderly mother every Sunday. Ms. Gardner Pierce, Blackwell said. Tell us about your relationship with your mother. We were close. Victoria Said. Her voice was steady, confident. I called her regularly. Visited when I could. My schedule was demanding. I run a consulting firm, but I made time for my mother. How often did you visit? Every few months. Sometimes, more frequently. It was difficult with my work travel, but I always made sure she knew I loved her. And how would you describe Isabel's relationship with your mother? Intense. Isabel was always there, always hovering, always making sure she was the center of Mom's life. It felt, she paused, it felt calculated, like she was positioning herself. Positioning herself for what? For exactly this. For the inheritance. David cross-examined. Ms. Gardner Pierce, you say you visited every few months. Can you tell me the last 3 times you visited your mother before she died? Victoria hesitated. I'd have to check my calendar. You don't remember. It was a difficult time. My work was demanding. Can you name one specific visit? One conversation. One moment you've shared with your mother in the last year of her life? Silence. Ms. We talked on the phone. That's not what I asked. Your Honor, Blackwell interrupted. This is badgering. Sustained, Judge Sullivan said. Move on, Mr. Chun. But the damage was minimal. Victoria had cried during her testimony, talked about how much she missed Mom, how hurt she was to be disinherited, how unfair it felt. The judge looked sympathetic. When court resumed after Victoria's testimony, Judge Sullivan reviewed her notes. I've heard both sides, she said, and I'm prepared to rule. The evidence suggests that, while Isabel Gardner was present in her mother's life, that presence may have constituted undue influence. Mrs. Catherine Gardner was elderly, medicated, and potentially vulnerable. The will change occurred at a time when she was increasingly dependent on Isabel for care. Under these circumstances, I find, Your Honor. I stood up. May I speak? Judge Sullivan looked annoyed. Miss Gardner, you're not an attorney. I know, Your Honor. But I have evidence. Evidence my attorney hasn't presented yet. Evidence my mother specifically left me to use if this moment came. What kind of evidence? Evidence that my mother was not just some vulnerable elderly woman. Evidence that she was someone who maintained exceptional cognitive function her entire life. Evidence that she anticipated this challenge and prepared accordingly. Blackwell was on his feet. Your Honor, this is a transparent stalling tactic. What evidence? Judge Sullivan asked me directly. I picked up the leather briefcase. Opened it. Inside was a manila envelope. Sealed, with Mom's handwriting on the front, to be opened only if Victoria contests the will. I broke the seal and pulled out the contents. A letter, addressed to me, and underneath it, a thick folder marked classified with official government seals. Your Honor, I said. My mother wasn't just a retired librarian. She worked for the FBI for 37 years. As an intelligence analyst specializing in domestic surveillance operations. The courtroom went completely silent. I'm sorry. What? Judge Sullivan said. My mother, Catherine Gardner, worked for the FBI from 1959 to 1996. Her cover was civilian employment at the Boston Public Library. Her actual job was analyzing surveillance data and tracking organized crime operations in New England. I held up the folder. This is documentation of her work. Specifically, a surveillance operation from 1996 called the Gardner Files. Named after her, it was her final operation before retirement. Blackwell was shaking his head. Your Honor, this is absurd. Some fantasy. I have documentation, I said. Federal employment records, commendations, security clearances, and a letter from the special agent in charge of the Boston FBI office confirming her service. I handed the documents to Judge Sullivan. She read them carefully. Her expression changed from skepticism to shock. These appear authentic, she said quietly. They are authentic, I said. My mother maintained top-secret security clearance until she retired in 1996. Her work required exceptional analytical skills, attention to detail, and cognitive function. She passed annual psychological evaluations. She was trusted by the federal government with classified intelligence. I pulled out Mom's letter to me, read it. Alohud. Isabel, if you're reading this in court, Victoria has done exactly what I expected. She's claiming I was senile, that you manipulated me, that I didn't know what I was doing. But I need the court to understand. I spent 37 years analyzing complex intelligence data. I spent 37 years maintaining operational security. I spent 37 years proving my mental capacity to the most demanding employer in the world. I was not senile. I was not confused. I was not manipulated. I made a clear conscious choice to leave my estate to the daughter who showed up, to the daughter who cared, to the daughter who earned it. Victoria called twice a year. You visited 52 times a year. That's not manipulation. That's math. Catherine Gardner, formerly Senior Intelligence Analyst, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Judge Sullivan set down the letter, looked at Victoria, then at me. Ms. Gardner Pierce, she said. Were you aware your mother worked for the FBI? Victoria's face was pale. I know she never said. You didn't know your mother was a federal intelligence analyst for 37 years. She said she was a librarian. She was a librarian. That was her cover identity. Her actual work was classified. Judge Sullivan looked at the documents again. According to these records, she held top-secret clearance until 1996. She received multiple commendations for analytical excellence. She was promoted to senior analyst in 1983. This is not a woman who could be easily manipulated. But she was 87. Blackwell tried. So what? Judge Sullivan's voice was sharp now. She was 87 years old with a documented history of exceptional cognitive function, a career that required annual psychological evaluations, security clearances that required ongoing assessment of mental capacity. The evidence that she was competent to make her own decisions is overwhelming. She looked at me. Ms. Gardner, why didn't you present this evidence earlier? Because my mother asked me not to. She wanted to keep her service private. But she also anticipated this moment. She knew Victoria would contest the will. So she left me these documents with instructions. Use them only if necessary. And you waited until the last possible moment. Yes, Your Honor. Because I hoped I wouldn't need them. I hoped Victoria would accept Mom's wishes. But I looked at my sister. She didn't. Judge Sullivan closed the folder. I've heard enough. The petition to invalidate the will is denied. Catherine Gardner's will stands as written. Her estate passes to Isabel Gardner. This case is closed. The gavel came down. In the hallway, Victoria cornered me. You knew, she said, about Mom, about the FBI, and you never told me. I found out 2 months ago, when I went through her papers after she died. She'd left me a sealed envelope. Inside was her letter and the documentation. Why didn't she tell us? Because it was classified. Even after retirement, she was bound by security agreements. She couldn't discuss her work, not with anyone. Not even family. But you're discussing it now. No, I'm discussing the existence of her work, not the details. Not the operations. Not the intelligence. Just the fact that she worked for the FBI and had the cognitive capacity to make her own decisions. Victoria looked lost. Smaller somehow. I didn't know her at all, did I? No, you didn't. Because you weren't there to know her. I was busy. We're all busy, Victoria. But I made time every Sunday for 6 years. And in those Sundays, Mom told me stories about her life, about her choices, about the work she couldn't discuss. She couldn't tell me the classified details, but she told me enough to know she was extraordinary. And she left everything to you. Because I showed up. That's all. I just showed up. Victoria walked away without another word. That evening, I sat in Mom's house, my house no end, read through the Gardner files. Not the classified parts. Mom had removed those, but the cover materials. The case summary. The public record portions. The Gardner files had been a 3-year operation tracking organized crime in Boston. Mom had been the lead analyst. Her work had led to 17 arrests, the seizure of $8 million in assets, and the dismantling of a major criminal network. She'd done all this while maintaining her cover as a children's librarian at the Boston Public Library. She'd gone to work every day, checked out books, helped kids with homework, ran story time, and then she'd gone to a secure facility and analyzed wiretaps and surveillance footage and financial records for 37 years. And none of us had known. Well, I'd known. Sort of. In the last 2 years of her life, she'd started telling me stories. Vague stories, carefully edited. Nothing that would violate her security clearances, but enough to know she'd lived 2 lives. The one we saw, and the one she couldn't tell us about. You must think I'm terrible, she'd said once, during one of our Sunday visits. Why would I think that? For lying? For living a double life? For keeping secrets from my own children? You weren't lying, Mom. You were protecting classified information. That's not the same thing. Victoria thinks I was just a librarian a simple life, nothing special, and you let her think that. I had too, but Isabel, she'd taken my hand. You asked questions, Ju, or listen. You wanted to know who I really was, not just who I appeared to be. Did you tell me everything? I told you everything I could. The rest is in the files. Locked away. Maybe someday they'll be declassified. Maybe you'll know the whole story. I don't need the whole story. I just need to know you. You do know me, she'd said, better than anyone else ever has. 2 weeks after the hearing, I got a call from the FBI. A woman named Special Agent Patricia Reynolds. She was the current SAC in Boston. Ms. Gardner, I wanted to reach out regarding your mother's estate hearing. Okay. The documents you presented in court, the Gardner files. We need to discuss those. My stomach dropped. Am I in trouble? No. Actually, the opposite. You handled the situation appropriately. You revealed only what was necessary and already in the public record. You didn't discuss classified details. You protected the integrity of your mother's work while defending her. Competency. Oh, thank you. I also wanted to tell you something about your mother, something she probably never mentioned. What? Catherine Gardner was one of the finest analysts in bureau history. Her work on organized crime operations in the 1980s and 90s was instrumental in dismantling several major criminal enterprises. She received multiple commendations. She trained a generation of analysts. She was, Agent. Reynolds paused. She was a legend. Within the Bureau, we still refer to certain analytical techniques as Gardner methods. I had no idea. She wouldn't have told you. That was her way. Quiet, effective. No ego. Host Excellence Agent Reynolds was quiet for a moment. She talked about, you know. She did, yes. In the last few years, before she fully retired from any bureau contact, she'd mention her daughter, Isabel, the one who visited every Sunday. The one who asked questions, the one who saw her as a person, not just a mother. What about Victoria? She never mentioned Victoria, not once. 3 months after the hearing, Victoria called me. Can we talk? She asked. Okay. Not on the phone. In person, at Mom's house. If that's okay. It's fine. She came over on a Saturday afternoon, looked around at the house that had been our mother's and was now mine. It looks the same, she said. I haven't changed much. Didn't feel right to. Can I ask you something? Sure. Did Mom leave me anything? Besides the token $1,000 in the will, she left you a letter. I was supposed to give it to you after the will was read, but you filed the lawsuit so fast, I never got the chance. I handed her an envelope, sealed, with her name on it in Mom's handwriting. Victoria opened it with shaking hands, read the letter, started crying. What does it say? I asked. She says. Victoria's voice broke. She says she knows I'll be angry about the will, that I'll feel cheated, but that she couldn't leave me the money because I never showed up to earn it. That inheritance isn't about blood relation. It's about presence. About care. About actually being there. That sounds like Mom. She says she loved me, but that love isn't the same as entitlement, that she couldn't reward absence with inheritance. That it wouldn't be fair to you, to the daughter who actually showed up. Victoria folded the letter carefully. I was a terrible daughter, wasn't I? You were busy. You had your life. That's not an excuse. You were busy too. You have a job, a life, but you made time. Because it mattered to me, because she mattered to me. She mattered to me too. I didn't show it. I thought being successful was enough. I thought making money and having a career was what mattered. I didn't realize the most important thing was just showing up. We sat in silence. "Can I tell you something?" Victoria asked. "Okay. I'm proud of you. For standing up in court. For honoring Mom's wishes. For not caving when Blackwell was destroying you. You were stronger than I expected. Mom prepared me. She knew this would happen. She knew you'd contest the will, so she left me the tools I needed. The FBI files. Yes, I had no idea she worked for the FBI. 37 years, and I never knew. She couldn't tell you, it was classified. But she told you. Only in the last 2 years, and only in vague terms. The details are still classified. Can you tell me anything about her work? About who she really was?" I thought about it. About what I could share without violating Mom's confidentiality. "She was brilliant," I said. Her work tracking organized crime in the 80s and 90s was groundbreaking. She developed analytical methods that are still used today. She trained other analysts. She was respected, feared. Even within the Bureau, they called her the Ice Queen because nothing rattled her. She could analyze the most brutal surveillance footage, the most disturbing evidence, and remain completely calm, completely analytical. That doesn't sound like Mom. That's because you only knew one side of her. The mother. The librarian, the gentle woman who baked cookies and read bedtime stories. But there was another side. The analyst, the investigator, the person who could stare into darkness and find patterns. I wish I'd known that side. You could have, if you'd asked. If you'd shown up. Victoria nodded slowly. I know. And I'll regret that for the rest of my life. A year after the hearing, I organized an event, a small gathering at the FBI field office in Boston. Agent Reynolds helped arrange it. We were dedicating a conference room to Mom, the Catherine Gardner conference room, with a plaque explaining her 37 years of service. Victoria, so did extended family. Some of Mom's former colleagues from the Bureau. People I'd never met who'd worked with her decades ago. One man, in his 70s, approached me during the reception. "You're Catherine's daughter." "Isabel?" "Yes. I'm Michael Torres. I worked with your mother in the 80s. She trained me when I was a new analyst." She was, he smiled. She was terrifying and brilliant. The best analyst I ever worked with. Thank you for coming. Your mother talked about you. In the last few years, before she fully retired, she said you were the only one who really saw her. Who asked questions, who wanted to know who she actually was. I was lucky to have her. She was lucky to have you, too. Not everyone gets a child who cares enough to really see them. 5 years after Mom died, I was contacted by the FBI again. Agent Reynolds called. "Isabel, we have news. The Gardner files are being declassified. Not completely, some portions remain classified, but enough to tell the story." "Really?" "Yes. And we want to do something. A public acknowledgement, a ceremony. We want to honor your mother's work publicly." Finally. The ceremony was held at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. Victoria came with me. We sat together as the director of the FBI spoke about Mom's career, about her contributions, about the Gardner methods that were still taught to new analysts. Catherine Gardner exemplified the best of the Bureau, the director said. She served for 37 years in anonymity, never seeking recognition, never breaking cover, just doing the work. Excellent work. World-class work. Her analytical methods helped dismantle organized crime operations across New England. Her training shaped a generation of analysts. Her dedication set a standard we still aspire to meet. He unveiled a photograph. Mom, in 1996. Her last year before retirement. Looking strong and serious and proud. We honor Catherine Gardner today, not just for her intelligence work, but for her integrity, for maintaining her cover even with her own family, for protecting classified information even when it meant being misunderstood, for sacrificing recognition to preserve operational security. That's true service. That's true sacrifice. After the ceremony, Victoria and I stood looking at Mom's photograph. "She looks so different," Victoria said. "So serious, so competent." I finished. "She looks competent, like someone who knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of." I wish I'd known this person. You could have. I know. I didn't ask the right questions, didn't look past the surface. Didn't see her as anything more than Mom. She was more than Mom. She was always more, but she couldn't tell you. She could only show you, and you had to care enough to see. We stood together in silence, looking at the photograph of a woman who'd lived 2 lives. The one everyone saw, and the one only a few really understood. 10 years after Mom died, I wrote a book, not about the classified operations, those details remained sealed, but about her life, about living a double identity, about the sacrifice of recognition, about the cost of keeping secrets. I called it The Ice Queen, a daughter's search for the mother behind the cover. Victoria wrote the foreword. "I spent 40 years thinking I knew my mother," she wrote. "I thought she was a simple librarian, a gentle woman who read 2 children and baked cookies and lived a quiet life. I was wrong. My mother was an FBI intelligence analyst, a legend within the bureau. A woman who changed the course of criminal investigations and trained generations of analysts. She kept this secret from me, from all of us, because that was her job, to maintain her cover, to protect her work. But it wasn't just the FBI that kept her secret. It was my own blindness, my own failure to see past the role to the person. My sister Isabel saw. She asked questions. Se les teneve. She cared enough to look past Mom to Catherine, and because of that, she inherited not just money, but truth, knowledge, understanding. That's the real inheritance. Not the estate, but the story. I lost that inheritance, not because my mother didn't love me, but because I didn't show up to claim it. The book was published to modest success. Some reviews, so me sales, nothing spectacular. But the FBI bought copies for every field office, put them in their libraries, used them in training. This is what sacrifice looks like. They told new agents, this is what it means to maintain cover, to protect information, to serve in silence. 15 years after Mom died, I received a letter from the National Archives. They were releasing more documents from the Gardner files. More of Mom's work, now available to the public. I went to Washington, spent 3 days in the archives, reading through her case files, her analytical reports, her intelligence assessments, seeing her mind at work, the way she connected disparate pieces of information, the way she identified patterns, the way she built cases that held up in court. She was extraordinary. And I'd known her, really known her, for 6 years of Sundays. That was the gift, not the money, not the house, not the inheritance that Victoria had fought for. The gift was knowing her, seeing her, understanding who she really was. That was priceless. 20 years after Mom died, I stood at her grave. Simple headstone, Catherine Gardner, 1921 to 2004. Mother, librarian, patriot. The word patriot had been added 10 years after her death. After the FBI acknowledged her service, Victoria stood beside me. We came together now, every year on Mom's birthday, stood at her grave and remembered. I wonder what she'd think, Victoria said, about the book, about the FBI ceremony, about being remembered. I think she'd be embarrassed. I said, she didn't do the work for recognition. She did it because it mattered. But she deserves recognition. Maybe, but I think what she'd care about more is that we understand, that we finally see who she was. All of her, not just the mother, but the analyst, the patriot, the person who sacrificed recognition for security. I see it now, Victoria said. I wish I'd seen it then. She knew you didn't see it. That's why she left everything to me. not as punishment, but as acknowledgement. Primera sa, hair. That was worth more than money could measure. We stood in silence. Two sisters, finally understanding the mother we'd both loved, but only one had truly known. The lesson came slowly, over decades. Not in a single moment, not in one revelation, but gradually, like truth, emerging from sealed files. The lesson was this: people are more than the roles they play, more than mother, more than librarian, more than elderly woman. They are full human beings with secret histories and hidden capabilities and extraordinary lives we'll never fully understand. Unless we ask, unless we listen, unless we show up. Mom was an FBI legend, a brilliant analyst, a patriot who served in silence. But she was also a mother who baked cookies and read bedtime stories and maintained a children's library. But we're true, and but we're real. But we're her Victoria, so only the mother. Only the surface, only Terrell. I saw Catherine, the woman behind the cover, the analyst behind the kindness, the legend behind the gentle smile. That's why she left me everything, not because I deserved it more, but because I'd done the work to earn it, the work of actually seeing her, really knowing her, showing up, asking questions, caring enough to look past the obvious. That work took 6 years. 52 Sundays per year, 312 visits. But it was worth it. Worth every Sunday, every conversation, every moment of presence. Because the real inheritance wasn't the $3.8 million, wasn't the house, wasn't the estate. The real inheritance was the truth, the story, the knowing. And that was priceless.